Hey, welcome back to another Manga Talks episode for today. So, because of a recent read that I had, it's made me want to make this video specifically talking about the suspense of disbelief in stories. And I pulled up a couple manga from my collection that kind of relate to that because it was an interesting read where it got me thinking about my preferences in stories. So, this one is the one I'm talking about here. This is a book called 我らコンタクティ or We Are Contactee. And to like start things off, I personally did not like it because I was not able to suspend my disbelief to enjoy the story. And that kind of got me thinking about, how I feel about that in other types of stories. So I pulled out a couple of books where I am able to enjoy stories and suspend my disbelief, and others where I can't do that. So yeah, just a random topic that popped up while reading recently that I wanted to just go on about. So yeah, to start off with, I'm going to use the book that started all of this as a jumping point. So 我らコンタクティ is a manga by mangaka Rui Morita, and it was a somewhat recent manga that was released, so it came second place in this manga grand prize thing. And essentially, so I'll say full spoilers for all the stories that will be shown today, but this book currently is not translated into English officially, but it is scanlated. But it is a manga that focuses on these two characters over here that work together to build a rocket to send into space. And the reason why they want to do that is because when our guy here was a kid, he had an encounter with a UFO, pretty much, or he thinks he encountered it. And here they are, both when they were kids, experiencing the same thing. And so when he was older, he decided that he really wanted to send a rocket to space to display a movie for aliens to see. So he would like project a movie onto like a sort of canvas or something like that and have that playing over and over in space for aliens. So that's his obsession, and he brings in his childhood friend that he was reunited with to do that. And so we actually have the main character. She is the main character, and she encounters him, and they both become entangled in this journey to build a rocket to send to space. And so overall, I think like starting off, I think the premise is pretty good. I bought this without not knowing much and only the premise itself. But you can tell that, there will be, it's a story where you will have to suspend your disbelief to enjoy it, specifically because we have a total of up to 4 people sending an actual rocket into space without the help of the government, without the help of anything at all. So that was the main reason why I couldn't really enjoy this book, among other reasons, because to me, even though the story itself was a moving one, I thought that the achievement of sending a rocket to space on your own, a rocket that you designed completely on your own, you built completely on your own. Let me find a picture of the rocket itself, actually. Of course, there are other characters and some other conflicts as well, but yeah, this is a glimpse of the rocket being built. But this is all done by one person, this guy. And that to me was just so out there and hard to believe that I could not get into the flow of the story at all. Not to mention that the pacing I felt was quite quick too. We were jumping a lot from like being introduced to these different characters at the start of the story to getting straight into building the rocket and skipping a lot of the parts in between that. And so that on top of the 1-man, 2-man mission to send the rocket to space was so hard to get into. And yeah, it's pretty interesting because I haven't had a book that has made me feel this way in quite a while, where it's just like, oh yeah, it's too unrealistic for me to actually like. But that's just my personal preference. If you are into that and you can suspend your disbelief, then I would recommend this story. But otherwise, yeah, that's my main critique, I would say, with this manga. But beautiful panels here, beautiful artwork. I do love the character designs. I love the contrast that his facial expressions are in comparison to our main character, who's very expressive, but he is very stoic, serious, oblivious engineer whose only goal is to send this rocket to space to project his movie on. Not his movie, sorry, the movie that he wants to show. I don't know, I'm trying to find if there's a specific diagram that explains the how he would project the thing. So I guess it's here, how he projects the movie onto the screen here. But yeah, other than that, I did feel like if this was a longer story, so if it was a couple volumes long, then I would have enjoyed it more too, because it would flesh out a lot of the characters. They introduced a couple of close friends and stuff of the two main characters, but it was very brushed over because we hopped right into the construction of everything, making the plans to find an island. Like they rented an island too, and they got stopped by police and all that, so it's just so out there in terms of the story. Side note, this guy reminds me of the coach from Slam Dunk. I don't remember his name. I watched the Slam Dunk movie recently. It was so good, but yeah, it reminds me of that. But yeah, he's from NASA or whatever the equivalent is in Japan, and they get caught, and it's this wild chase where they try to do it secretly and whatnot. But yeah, I won't say the actual ending, but I think you can tell what the ending is. So yeah, it still is a moving story, but just an example of something where I can't fully suspend my disbelief to enjoy it in its entirety. And so continuing off that, I also pulled up two other works where I thought the same thing, where the stories were so out there that it was tough to really believe and be fully invested. And so this one is the next one here. So this is a story called Stardust Family by Horoyama Aki. It is officially translated in English and released in print. I'm not sure by who, but yeah, this was a recent book as well, I believe 2022 or something like that. Go to check. Yeah, 2022 to 2023. And so the premise of this story is we are set in a world where in order to have a family and to start a family, you have to be surveyed and tested to see whether you are fit to become a family, whether the parents themselves are suitable enough. And the people who are testing these parents are kids. So it's literal kids going out to all these families' houses, and they essentially just role play. So these testers, they become their fake children for a day, and so they evaluate whether the parents are fit enough in terms of all these different areas and whatnot. And yeah, it's like a sci-fi type of story, like a future version of the world being put into play. But I think I showed the second volume off, but yeah, this is the first volume here. I thought the start of it was very, very interesting because we focus on our main character here, who's a surveyor, and he is tasked with testing a family that actually wants to be failed. And that already is quite an interesting concept, and it really pulls you in because you're thinking, why would this family here want to be failed when it's such a big thing in this society? If you fail the test, then you're kind of outcasted because you're seen as not being able to be upstanding citizens, moral human beings and whatnot. And so it dives into a lot of that into the first volume, where you learn of this family's history, why they don't want to have kids and that sort of thing. But where it comes like that whole thing of me not being able to suspend my disbelief is the second volume, because major spoilers, it is a scene or like a part of the second volume where everything's revealed that all of these kids, these surveyors, are actually like artificial alien creatures. Like these surveyors, they experience a lot of abuse during these tests from these parents, and you're wondering, these little kids, how are they going to all these families every day and testing them without being in the hospital after that? And it's because they are literal aliens developed to just recover and heal instantly so they can do their jobs. And that, to me, if you can see where it was revealed, this is like halfway through the second volume, and that threw me off entirely. I thought that them making this story a story about aliens and like this kind of sci-fi feel to it, where everything that was built up to that moment was kind of ruined, because there was no hint of that at all, I would say, in the first volume and a lot of the story. It felt like more of just you are exploring this concept, this future concept, with focusing on a family that tries to go against that, and it felt more like a human drama solely. But when you introduce the kids being these alien creatures that aren't supposed to have all these human emotions, and they're being like treated as slaves pretty much, it kind of ruins the build-up, I feel, because it feels to me like a cop-out that they went for. And not to say it wasn't emotional, because what happened after that is, now that it's revealed that he's an alien creature, he has a sort of identity crisis. They can erase his memories and everything. So it was quite sad towards the end, because he's controlled like a slave. But it just felt like an extreme cop-out, and I was pretty, like, to be honest, pretty disappointed that the story went in that direction. And thinking back to it, the title is called Stardust Family. That's where the word Stardust comes from. It's related to that, the fact that they are aliens. And it's just, man, kind of sucks that it really went for that route when it came to storytelling. But that's just my opinion. That's just another example of what I thought that I couldn't get into, because the concept of them being aliens was so far-fetched to me that it threw off all the build-up of just this tragic human drama story in a like future setting, and what that was going for. But yeah, so if you are interested, this is officially translated in English, but personally for me, not my thing. I couldn't really dive into it as much as other people could. So yeah, that was Stardust Family. And the last thing, this one is not that serious of an example, but this is Uzumaki. I think it's really funny because of course I love Junji Ito, one of the first horror mangaka that I got into in general. But for Uzumaki, I feel like everyone knows what the story is anyways. This is just the big expanded edition that we have in Japanese. Side note, I have not watched the Uzumaki anime yet, because I saw all of the disappointing animation that happened during like the second, third episodes, whatever it was. So unfortunately, I just lost all interest in that. But I still love the original story. But you may be wondering why I brought this manga up in terms of the examples of stories I couldn't suspend my disbelief for. And it's not for the spirals. It's not for the wacky events that are happening. And I think I mentioned this on the channel briefly beforehand. But the reason I think it's really funny that I can't suspend my disbelief is because our main character, I find it really unbelievable and unrealistic, but in a humorous way, that she goes through and experiences all of this insane and horrifying shit and still manages to stay intact, sane. you know, every chapter or most chapters are of her seeing, you know, all of these spirals taking over her loved ones and the city and her friends and just random people. And to me, it's just like, how are you still acting like a normal human? How are you still in this town? How are you still sane at any capacity? So that was the reason why I chose to include Uzumaki as an example in this video, just because I found it really funny that she was still totally okay with everything happening after going through 700 pages of insanity, of spirals everywhere, that she still manages to think. And I wouldn't say logical, because, you know, it's like, it's horror, but like, she's still fine, she looks fine, she seems fine. Of course she's scared, but how is she not insane? So yeah, I found that really funny, so that's why I wanted to include that example. So yeah, those are the three examples of just some of the three examples of stories that I couldn't suspend my disbelief for to enjoy fully. Of course, this one's like a joke example, but I wanted to get through just two stories where I could do that, and where I was able to suspend my disbelief and really enjoy and get invested into the story because of the way the mangaka had written the story, pasted and integrated the unrealistic aspects into the reading experience. So the first one I want to talk about is this here. So I recently have talked about this book because it is one of my favorites of 2025. It's an amazing book. This one is called Boku no Kokoro ga Chuu to Naku. And if you want a full rundown of that story, just go to one of my previous manga talks. It has this same thumbnail. But just to go over the general premise again, we are following a family, but our main character is over here, and the father-in-law. So what starts us off, the very first panel of this story we see is the main character's father-in-law sitting on top of a fridge and acting like a cat, because the father-in-law believes that he is a cat. And what is unearthed during the story is that we learn of the main character's desire to be a rat or a mouse, and that was like a suppressed desire he had when he was a kid. This is him as a kid. And so the whole story goes through his journey with finding his identity, consolidating his own personal desires with the expectations of those around him. And we have the father-in-law as a kind of like reflection of who he is and what he wants to be. So different perspectives that he has to consider, all that type of stuff. And so, you know, it's if you see here, those are the two on the cover. And the part of this that is I think, you know, where you would have to suspend your disbelief is, of course, the two of them acting like animals, because when we see them acting like animals, they are visually drawn as the animals themselves. As you can see here, he's drawn as an actual mouse. But in reality, they show really funny scenes where when the two are like walking outside, they're actually walking on all fours. And you know, this, for example, is the father-in-law sleeping on a car bonnet, but to other people, you know, they are completely like shocked, because you just see this old man curled up on a car. Right, and I think that with the whole message of figuring out what you want to be in your identity, I think it's such a good way to incorporate this, where we see them as how they view themselves as the actual animals versus how others view them. And that, I feel like, it's really easy to suspend your disbelief for, and it's really effective for the entire story. And you know, this is one of my favorite reads of 2025, so yeah, it's such a good read, and of course I had to bring it up again. But this one is not translated in English at the moment. You can only read this in Japanese, so I really hope that one day this is put out in English. This is released by Beam Comics, which is a great publisher when it comes to more alternative stuff. And so yeah, I thought that like the visual style of showing these guys as the animals and how they're used as a metaphor is straight to the point, so easy to understand, but still very in-depth and detailed with how they explain the story and how we view the main character growing as a person. So yeah, that's an example of something that I could suspend my disbelief for. And last but not least, these are stories by Natsujikei Miyazaki, and I've got two of them here, but either way, like any of Natsujikei stories are pretty much along the lines of all of these unrealistic, crazy ass events happening, but they all fit for the story, they work with the pacing, and it really is communicated well to the reader. And I've talked about Natsujikei a lot on the channel before, one of my favorite authors of all time, and their works, from what I've read so far, they all focus on daily life, but it's a lot on the extraordinary and the unique moments of daily life. And there's a lot of random things that are happening. There are lots of boundaries crossed between reality and imagination, a lot of magical realism, and that I feel is done so well when it comes to any of Natsujikei stories that I have read so far. Like, so for example, this one here, this is called Even in Your Absence, she continues to shine, or he continues to shine. There are a lot of crazy things that happen here relating to our main character, who has an ideal version of his idol in his head versus the actual girl that pops up, and it's a lot of blend between, is this really happening, or is this in his imagination? He's trying to justify everything, all that type of stuff. And then we have this book here, where we get a whole arc of a whole building here being filled with clones of our main character's sister, but it all works really well because it shows off this idea of running away from reality. It's a story based on family trauma, childhood trauma, and all that, and all this stuff. If you want the detailed look through these stories, I'll put the link in the description of where I talked about these manga in a lot more detail. But yeah, overall, I think Natsujikei is such an amazing story writer when it comes to combining the strange and the ordinary. And let me just get another example too. Also, I've always got to shout out Glacier Bay Books. This is the first English release of any Natsujikei story. So this is called And the Strange and Funky Happenings One Day. And this one I really enjoy too. This one is a collection of short stories, and by short I mean quite short. Like, some of them are 8 pages long, but all of them focus on the same thing. Like combining a lot of like crazy stuff happening in ordinary life, how these characters traverse these weird situations and all these weird relationships, but all of them are so moving, so emotional, memorable. It's just amazing. So always recommend Natsujikei Miyazaki, and of course Glacier Bay Books. So yeah, I would say that would be the end of today's videos. So I think mainly I spent more time on the stories that I couldn't suspend my disbelief for, because it just I thought a lot more about it compared to the ones I could. These were just some examples, right? These aren't the only examples of books where I've read where I've had this case, but because I just had this topic pop up in my mind and I wanted to talk about it, I just put a couple of random ones from the shelf to kind of illustrate my point. But yeah, all of this was just a personal thing, something that I noticed while reading Are Contactee that spread to me just looking back at what I've read in the past couple of, I don't know, months, years, to see whether that applied to different stories and whatnot. And yeah, so I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have any examples yourselves of like stories where it was so unrealistic that you couldn't suspend your disbelief, or stories that you could, like the most unrealistic stories out there that you still really could get invested in because of how it was integrated into the writing and the illustration of the story, chuck a couple comments in or chuck a couple of examples in the comments. It'll be interesting to see. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this one. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.